Okay, back to form. We have episode 7, back to form. And normally you'd expect when back to form is mentioned, this is a good thing, but no, this is back to form, butchering the law. We'll get there with what elements of the law they butcher, but let's start with the beginning of the episode, because at the beginning of the episode we see the fallout of the exploding of Mount Doom, and we see Galadriel is covered in a light coating of ash. She's still wearing her metal armor, which is absolutely fine, just slightly ashen covered. Her hair is a little bit disheveled. It's got a bit of ash in it, and she, apart from being knocked over, apparently, she's absolutely fine. No problems at all, which is a bit of a problem. I've actually had a look into what pyroclastic flow is, which is what she got consumed by. And one of the things we find, this is from pubs.usgs.gov, whatever that is. It's the resource that Wikipedia uses to quote about the temperature, which apparently pyroclastic flows 2 weeks after they have erupted. Deposits can range in temperature from 570 to 785 Fahrenheit. That's 2 weeks after the eruption. Galadriel got taken up during the actual eruption. So if we go based on what Wikipedia seems to suggest, the gases and tephra, the basic spewing out that we have, temperatures can reach about 1,000 degrees centigrade or 1,800 Fahrenheit. Galadriel has survived with slightly mussed up hair and a slight bit of covering of ash. Temperatures like that, do me a favour. Okay, so already it's looking silly. Very soon afterwards, after we see that she's survived and that she's absolutely fine, we then see a horse running past as Galadriel is surveying the scene, and the horse runs by, and the horse is on fire. Now, it's not completely on fire, it's just his back, so it could be that it's just the saddle's on fire or something like that. But either way, the horse is on fire as it goes by. Galadriel, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Galadriel is fine. So she starts wandering around. She finally decides it might be an idea to start helping people, despite the fact that she just stood there and looked as the volcano erupted. She decides now's the time to start trying to help people. So, funnily enough, she finds Theo. Now, as we'll see as things progress, they end up getting separated from the rest of the group. No idea how this happens, because if we remember from what they were at, assuming that you saw the previous episode, they were all together. Theo was with everyone because he's just discovered that he had an axe rather than the sword hilt. But he was very close by. Galadriel was right by everyone else, because we could see that everyone else was actually doing stuff to help the people to try and escape as the volcano erupted. But she was just standing there. So she's very close by. And yet it seems like her being caught up in the pyroclastic flow event in the cloud has moved her miles away, and somehow has managed to take Theo away with her. And so all of a sudden these two, it's them on their own with the mess that's around them from the explosion. And for some reason, after wondering about how people could possibly dare challenge her, how she could possibly see any way why she should stoop so low as to help others out, now she cares. Now she seems to care about Theo. Who is Theo to her? He's absolutely no one, yet she cares because she's Galadriel, she's our hero, and she cares for absolutely no reason whatsoever. I'm sure if we would speak to the writers of Rings of Power, then they'd be saying something like, oh, this is her character arc, this is her character development, this is us seeing her go from being this arrogant elf to being someone who cares. That's not how this works. You've effectively flicked a switch that's triggered her to be this caring individual who's out for helping others, who literally seconds before, in terms of how we've seen this, because if you watch episode 6 into episode 7, seconds before seeing her say, how can I help? Acting out, how can she help? She's just stood there and looked and couldn't give a stuff about everyone else while the volcano explodes. She's not someone who cares. This is completely unearned. This is not in character with what they've created. It looks and sounds ridiculous. And then we flick to another part of the recovery from the explosion. We have various people caught in buildings because their stupid Queen Miriel said get to cover, and so people were getting inside buildings, and then they've been trapped when the buildings have been hit by stuff. Not a surprise, given what was already happening before she shouted get to cover. We then find that the dear old wimp, the pathetic individual known as Elendil, who should be this 7 foot, I think 7 foot 10, 7 foot 11, something like that, should be a massive human being. He was Elendil the Tall. He should be this massive human being who is able to do so much physically, because he was a huge character physically. I mean, if you think, for those of you that watched Game of Thrones, the Mountain, bigger than him, I'm fairly certain. I haven't checked out the details within the lore of it, but certainly in the way he's portrayed within the TV series, Elendil will be taller than him. And yet Elendil cannot lift this bit of building that's got one of the soldiers trapped underneath. And yet Miriel comes and Miriel saves, because Miriel's a wonderful, strong, amazing woman who can do anything she wants, and is the difference for everyone else. And no man can ever be made to look like they're being successful when she's around, because she's the only one who can be successful and be strong and help to win the day in all of this. Have a look at who's playing Miriel. She's a waif of a woman. Again, utterly stupid, purely there to make a political point, and it's the whole idea of watching things like this is you're supposed to be drawn into the story and to suspend your disbelief about the fact that there are fantastical things going on because of how they're portraying it to you. They're telling you how the world is. They're showing you how the world is. It makes sense. And therefore, even though it doesn't, none of that could happen in the real world, it's supposed to be able to make sense within what you're watching. And so, for the time that you're watching, you suspend your disbelief and you're taken into the story. This doesn't do it. So all of the mess that's going on there, and we see right at the end something which we will see a development. Miriel has a few sparks go into her face, and then a flame comes out, though she never gets hit by it. And then we switch back to the Harfoots. So we're now back with the Harfoots. Now, one of the things they have, it's a standard thing as you'd expect now with TV series, there's the catch up beforehand. And we're reminded of the time when she was with not Gandalf, the weird man who's fallen out of the sky. He was healing himself in water and he was freezing the water, and she touches his hand despite not being given permission to do that, despite not knowing at all what's going on. She put her hand on him, her hand starts to freeze, she then gets thrown back when she startles him because of what's going on with her hand, and then she runs away. You'd think that would have some kind of consequence, but no. The only thing that we have a vague awareness of, and even then it's only vague and only every now and then, is that Nori doesn't have quite as much trust in him as she used to. Do we see that she's told her mum and dad about what happened? Do we see that she's told her friend, whatever her name is? No, there's none of this. None of this at all. All we have is they're carrying on walking, and not Gandalf is pulling his bit along with them, and it's all going as they intend. And they do finally get to where they're supposed to be. They finally arrive at the what was it? It's the glade where they've got this food, and they find things are not in a good way. Okay, we then switch back to Elrond with Durin, and we have Elrond making an offer to the dwarves of Khazad-dûm. Now, a positive thing here. There is an offer which is made, and the offer is made to last for 500 years. Now, obviously, they've got absolutely no concept of time in general with the way that this is going, because as we've seen, they've managed to make what should have been at least a 2-day journey happen in the space of a matter of a day or less. All sorts of things that they just have absolutely no concept of the passage of time. But here at least there is a presentation of, okay, we're talking in far greater timescale than we would normally expect from our perspective as humans. 500 years, just as a rough idea, that's basically the entire lifetime of a dwarf twice over. So dwarves live kind of 200 to 250 years is the kind of the general lifespan of a dwarf. And so we're talking about twice the entire length of a dwarf's life. You're potentially saying that's if a generation for dwarves is maybe 50 years, so that's 10 generations that's being offered. So that at least is good. It showed that someone was vaguely paying attention to something when they came to create it. However, very soon afterwards, we discover that they had absolutely no concept of what this meant. Because what we see, and I'll get back to the books, because what we have is all of a sudden they revert back to talking about Elrond. Now, Elrond is trying to convince the dwarves that they should take the deal, and he apparently he knows some of the dwarven language. And when one of the dwarves comments about how 500 years is a very good deal to come from elves. But there's a comment made about if they keep their word, and Elrond says that he keeps his. King Durin then says, "Why should we trust the elves?" And Elrond says, "You shouldn't, but you should trust me." And then he says, "Because I am Elrond, half-elven, I see what elves can't." Now, one of the things we have to recognise straight away is what Elrond half-elven actually means. Because if I can find the right bit, we have the description of what it is that goes on with Elrond. I'm just trying to remember whether this is from the appendices or whether it is from the Silmarillion itself. But I mean, either way, what it basically says in the book is Elrond and Elros are half-elven by birth, so They are the sons of Eärendil, who is a man. Eärendil is the son of Tuor, and Idril, who is the daughter of Turgon. So he is half elven by birth, but there is the way it seems to be is that they gain their racial kind of lineage through the father. In this case, and then we have Elwing marries Eärendil, and she seems to get her lineage through her mother's line. So she is the daughter of Dior, who is the son of Beren and Luthien. And Dior, he is half elven in that Luthien, his mother, is an elf, but there's kind of question marks as to exactly what he was at the time that what she was at the time that he was born, because she went back as a human and died as a human in Western Beleriand, in Lindon, the Lindon that was in Beleriand before the breaking of Beleriand, and only a little bit being left over. But either way, the way the story seems to portray it is that Dior, because he goes to be the king of Doriath after the sacking of Doriath by the dwarves and the killing of Thingol, he's then the king, which would mean that he's assumed to be elven. He marries an elf, and they have a daughter, Elwing, and two sons, though they get killed off. And so we have Elwing and Eärendil, both of whom have half-elven blood, and they marry, and they have Elrond and Elros. Now, this is all within the first age, and when it comes to the end of the first age, they're basically given a choice by the Valar. They can choose to be elven or human. Now, I don't quite know why we end up with a choice being given to Elrond's children in the third age, because Arwen gets to choose and she chooses to be human, but it seems like Elladan and Elrohir choose to be elves. I'm not quite sure how this whole thing works, but we're basically told there is the choice for Elrond and Elros. Elrond chooses to be part of the elven kind, and so he is. Therefore, he is fully elf. His lineage is half-elven, but he is an elf. So this whole thing about saying he's half-elven, he sees things that elves don't. No. Elrond is an elf. Him being called half-elven is a nod to his lineage. It's like Beren is called. I forget the name he's given, but he's given a name in Sindarin which refers to the fact that he had his hand bitten off by the huge wolf that had swallowed his hand, which had the Silmaril in it. Or you have Frodo, who is known by the. Is it the Four Fingers or the Nine Fingers? Whatever it is, he's given a little kind of nickname as part of his title, referencing the fact that he had his finger bitten off by Gollum. You have all sorts of names throughout which make reference to certain elements of their own personal story. It's like if you go to kind of Norwegian, Norse naming, as well as being the surnames would be there'd be a reference to who they are the son of if they were male. So the son of Godwin is Godwinson, and so on and so on. But you also have names within the Norse records where they have a name based on something they've done, something they have achieved. So this whole thing of Elrond half-elven is not saying he's not pure blood, he's looked down upon by elves, etc., etc., etc. This is not what half-elven means. He's half-elven by lineage. But in terms of what he is, whether he's elf, human, or what have you, he is fully elf. He has taken on the nature of an elf. So why they keep on obsessing over this whole half-elven thing is utterly ridiculous and completely against any basic understanding of how all of this works. So he tries to convince them that he's the one to trust, and they say no. And then we have certainly a questionable period where we have Prince Durin pleading with his father that they would help Elrond. Now, I will admit there has been at least some progression going one bit after the other, showing at least a slight growth in terms of the relationship between Prince Durin and Elrond. But not to the point where he would be pleading with his father that that Elrond's request would be answered positively. Not to the point where he declares Elrond is my brother as much as if he was actually born from my mother. We've almost literally had Durin saying he's my brother by another mother. We've as good as had that. But this isn't earned as much as it should be. I can almost accept parts of it because there has been a growth, but it's a step way too far. It's like if someone's looking at a world record in athletics and you have a sudden jump by a massive amount. All of a sudden, there's going to be massive question marks of did this person use drugs? Are they cheating? Etc. etc. Because you can't see how this has been earned. There's been no natural progression that leads towards it in quite the way that it should do. So we have Durin arguing with his father over trying to help Elrond. And so we end up with that argument, and Durin has to say to Elrond, no, it's not happening. Then we're back to the Númenóreans, and we finally find out quite what's happened with Miriel. Miriel, we find, is being led, well, she's got a hand on the guy who got made lieutenant by happening to touch a little bit of Galadriel's clothing in the ridiculous sword fight that happened 2 episodes ago, was it? I think it was 2 episodes ago. And she's been blinded. You can see she's clearly got kind of a bit of scarring around her eyes, and the way she's looking, the actress is clearly portraying that she can't actually see. It's kind of a wide-eyed stare of, I can't see anything, I'm trying to see, but I can't. But this again takes us back to the stupidity of what this entire cataclysm can do. Because, again, right at the beginning, Galadriel, consumed by the cloud that is potentially over 1,000 degrees centigrade. Just a little bit of a dusting on her, and her hair put out of place. Miriel, a few sparks in her eyes. She's blinded. The comparison between the two, and the comparison in terms of what happened to them, it's a complete disconnect within the writer's brain as to how one can happen from something so little and another can't happen from something that was massive. So we've got Miriel. She's been blinded, so she's been taken off, and then we switch over to Galadriel, and Galadriel and Theo are suddenly find themselves way away from where the Númenóreans have been marching as they're seeking to go back to their ships to return to Númenor. and Galadriel and Theo are now together, and Galadriel has decided it's about time to do another noble thing, and so she gives Theo her sword. Gives Theo her sword. Theo, who has done nothing to earn being given the sword from Galadriel. Galadriel does not know Theo. We establish right at the start, she says, "Come here," and does not recognise who he is. She is very clear. She does not know him, and she's just kind of. We're effectively talking about a road trip story of them getting to know each other on their journey. She gives him her sword, despite the fact that the only other weapon she has is the dagger of her brother. They're in the middle of we will soon discover is Mordor. They officially rename it Mordor, so it definitely is. But the Southlands, where they now know the orcs can wander around in daylight because the cloud is covering the sun, so the orcs aren't impaired by it. Galadriel, who is this tough warrior who's clearly killed more orcs than she can ever count, she gives her sword to this whelp of a boy who's simply worrying about where his mother is. If she was wanting them both to get back to his mother and to the Númenóreans, she should be keeping the sword. She should be doing the fighting, and he should be basically standing behind her, based on the character we've been told of her. But no, now is the time to be giving. Now is the time to be gracious and responding to the needs of others. And so she gives Theo her sword. Galadriel has, she's not earned this this position that she's taken. Theo has not earned the right to have the sword given to him by Galadriel. There is absolutely nothing there by which we can say that makes any sense whatsoever. Why I'm surprised about them? I'm not surprised about this. None of us should be surprised at this, because this is Rings of Power. Rings of Power makes no sense. Anyway, back to the Harfoots, the hobbits, that they refuse to call hobbits. They try to get around the fact that there's no hobbits until a certain point within the Third Age by calling them Harfoots, despite the fact that Tolkien is very clear that Harfoots are hobbits. Sorry, just got that out of my system. Anyway, the Harfoots say goodbye to not Gandalf because of a little accident that happened, whereby they looked to him to try and heal the tree that had been hit by part of the volcanic explosion, which come and destroyed the glade. And what happens is that he puts his hands and cracks start to happen and a branch falls off. And it nearly hits Nori, and I think it might be a younger sibling, certainly a younger Harfoot. And so they say goodbye to him, and the Lenny Henry character, he points towards Greenwood the Great, which we'd later know as Mirkwood. He's pointing towards the large forest to the north, and so they say goodbye to Gandalf. And then we have Nori saying, "Oh, I'm just a Harfoot. I'm just a Harfoot." It seems like she's been defeated. She's recognised that she's not as special as she thought she was. She's not. She's not the person that the stories can happen to. Wait for it. We'll be back. Okay, we're then back to Galadriel, and Galadriel and Theo are resting, and Theo asks a question about whether Galadriel had lost anyone. She says yes, her brother, and she then says she lost Celeborn. Now, I will grant She does not say that she saw Celeborn die. So it's entirely possible that the way they're looking at it is that based on the Second Age, the Tale of the Years, where it lists off all the things that happen, Galadriel and Celeborn don't actually appear in any of that. There is no saying of this is where they go, this is where they go. So they could be trying to posit the idea that Galadriel is going to find Celeborn again. Indeed, it could be the way that things seem to be suggested is that there's some kind of budding romance between Galadriel and Cinnamon, wannabe Aragorn, who's actually Sauron, Halbrand. It could be that there's this budding romance thing's being suggested, and that she returns to Lindon or some elf haven. I hope it's not to Lorien, because that's definitely going to be another lore screw up. But either way, she's going to come to an elven haven of some kind, and Celeborn is there, and she's reunited with her husband. She rejects Halbrand, and that's what turns him into Sauron. Halbrand the Incel returns to being Sauron storyline that they are likely to be pushing. But anyway, she talks about she's lost her husband. This is one of the biggest bastardizations of the lore so far, because it's very clear within the other details that we have from other sources from Tolkien's Legendarium that Celeborn and Galadriel stay together. They're married in Doriath. They travel to the refugee places when Doriath is torched. They stay together. They go to Lindon. They then go to Eregion very early on in the start of that. They then I can't remember whether they go to Rivendell or whether they go back to Lindon. I think they might go to Rivendell with Elrond, and then in the Third Age they pass over and they go to Lothlorien in the other side of the Misty Mountains. Celeborn and Galadriel are always together. In fact, one of the interesting things about the storyline of Galadriel is that Celeborn is actually a bit dim-witted. He's called Celeborn the Wise, but actually he's not all that. What we do know about him is that he is an elven prince related to King Thingol, and that he's married to Galadriel and has a daughter with Galadriel. What we can say from all of the details is that it seems like Galadriel, when she starts off in the First Age, she's really proud. She's effectively up herself. She thinks she's the bee's knees. She rebels against the Valar, and part of the reason that she stays at the end of the First Age, she stays in Middle Earth, is because she doesn't feel like she's actually earned it effectively. But what we can see with her relationship with Celeborn is that Celeborn is not her equal. She would be the equal to, say, a Feanor or to a Maedhros or a Fingolfin or one of the great lords of the elves. But instead, she's with this slightly dim-witted, by elven standards, husband, and that is effectively her penance, that she gives the wisdom to Celeborn the Wise. She is the wisdom behind the throne. She is the guidance behind the throne, and yet she doesn't take the credit. The Lord Celeborn, you'll see that the references that are made within the Lord of the Rings, where she is always talking about the Lord Celeborn this, the Lord Celeborn that. She is saying he is better than me, but she's the one that's actually there with the power. It's just that she's learnt humility. And this comes through the relationship with Celeborn. So they never should be separated at all. Another huge issue within all of the various screw-ups that they've done and twistings of the law. So Celeborn is not dead. If they have actually killed him off, then that immediately tells us that we should never take anything like this being even close to being anything that, based on what Tolkien wrote, because it's like saying, well, okay, we're gonna rewrite the first series of Game of Thrones, and we're going to kill off Ned Stark in the first episode, Robert Baratheon in the second episode, and then we're going to kill off the entire family of Cersei and so on in the third episode, and we'll see what happens after that. That's not how the story goes in that series, but that's effectively what will have been done if Celeborn is actually killed off. Okay, we're back to Galadriel and Theo being there. They suddenly have to stop talking because there are orcs coming. Now, the orcs, if we remember, the orcs are there when the volcano explodes. The orcs start to react when the volcano explodes and they kill the guards and things like that. But they still get caught up in the explosion. Yet we have a look and the orcs are not touched by the explosion, by the big cloud that came, anything like that. Completely unharmed. We have no explanation for this, nothing at all, but they're completely unharmed as well. And it continues to make no sense with how they've done all of this. Back to the dwarves. We have Durin deciding after he's thrown the little piece of mithril that he'd given to Elrond, that Elrond gave back to him. He threw it to the leaf that had been decaying because of his frustration, and he suddenly sees that the leaf heals because of the mithril. So Durin has called back Elrond, and they've gone to dig by themselves, so that it's completely under the... it's completely behind the back of King Durin, but Prince Durin has decided he's going to do it. And I don't know quite what's going on in the minds of the creators of this, but Durin is the only one doing any work. Elrond is effectively sitting there chatting while his friend is hammering away. Now, granted, Durin's the one that knows what he's doing, but Elrond isn't helping out in any way. I do not understand, because the process you should have is if it's just two people doing it. Durin knows what he needs to be hitting, and he'd then be telling Elrond what needs to be done in terms of shifting things out of the way and so on. We have a reveal within this as well of Elrond let Durin win. It's a nice little scene within it, but there's an element to which, I mean, why does it need to be said? Why does it need to be said? Yes, there's a case for saying, well, Elrond wants everything to be out in the open with his friend now that he has rebuilt the friendship, but it doesn't need to be said within this. All it does is cast a little bit of a cloud on things. And then we have King Durin discovers them, and they stop the digging, and we cut away. Now, this is where we get to the bit I don't quite fully understand, because from, I think it was 2 episodes ago, or it might have been last episode, I can't remember which. I think it was 2 episodes ago. We had this weird androgynous elf creature thing. Who there was a group of them. They saw where the not Gandalf character hit the ground as a meteor, and they're exploring that, and they clearly wanted to go and find out what it is. Now, I don't know, the assumption based on the based on the narrative that was going on at the time, suggested that these are sent from Lindon. So they are part of the High Elves. They're going to find out what this is. And the character's name, the main character that they reference, is called the Dweller, whatever that means. But what happens is that the Dweller is looking still for not Gandalf. The Harfoots all hide when they see, and so they're wandering off. And then, for some reason, I guess because Nori has decided that she doesn't like him now, she runs out and she shouts at the group, saying, "You're going the wrong way. He went that way," and points in the basically the opposite direction. Now, of course, it could be that she's actually being nice and she's trying to point them away from him, but we don't know for certain. So the only assumption we can go on is based on what she says, which means that she's actually pointing them towards. And particularly with what is said a little bit later. Now, she turns away from them, and then she turns back, and they're not there, and then they're right up close, and they take something. I can't remember what it is that they hold, but they end up possibly with a crisp apple, that one of the ones that have been flamed. It's worth pointing out beforehand that what we've missed out in between is the fact that it turns out that not Gandalf did heal the tree. Apples grew all over the place. They brought them in and so on. Everyone was really happy. But now the Dweller has got whatever it is. They picked something out of Nori's hair, which that might be it. And it's her father comes up to stand up for her. He's got a flaming torch, and he waves it effectively in their face. And the Dweller puts the hand on the torch and consumes the fire, and then blows the charcoaly dust out. And that sets fire to all of the caravan carts that the Harfoots had. Now, if these are elves, this is very un-elf-like behaviour, which then begs the question, what on earth are they? Well, they wouldn't be humans, because humans on mainland Middle-earth don't act in this way. They won't be Istari, looking for other Istari, because the Istari don't do this because they're sent to help. So there's a possibility they might be suggesting, well, this is Sauron, or another lackey of Sauron who's of similar power level. But it makes absolutely no sense in terms of what we heard previously, because all the suggestions are these are elves who've been sent to find out about this mysterious meteor that struck and what it means. And yet they're destroying the Harfoot stuff. I mean, at least it points to where the massive genocide of all the Black Hobbits happens. Because clearly now, with all of their food and their belongings burnt to a crisp, there's no way they're going to survive. So that might be purely what it's about. It's about wiping out the darker skinned Harfoots, so that hobbits, so that when we come to The Hobbit and the Lord of the Ring films, it's all white hobbits, and we can say, well, okay, it's the elves' fault. The elves committed the genocide of the black hobbits. But anyway, so this all happens, and then again we're back to the Númenóreans, and we're back to this whole stupidity around. Remember, Aragorn spoke to his horse in the Lord of the Rings films. Remember all of that, and so Elendil releases Isildur's horse because Isildur is missing, and his horse doesn't want to go anywhere because he wants to go and find his master. So the horse has his bridle taken off. He's released, and obviously he's going to go and find his master, just like Aragorn is found by his horse after the battle with the wargs on the way to Helm's Deep. So another member berry coming up Remember, we did this, just like they did. Remember, we're just as good as the Lord of the Rings films. No, you're not. Theo is then wandering around camp, and for some reason, he wanders into a tent which, I mean, from the outside, it could quite easily have been the Queen's royal tent. It's a very grand-looking tent. It's got the silver tree on it, and the kind of expectation you would have is that this is an important tent. He's not asked anyone what it is. There's no sign on it to tell him what it is. He just wanders in, and it just so happens to be the tent of healing. And my hopes were built up ever so slightly that I should have realised, no, this is merely a setup to it being not the case. It's almost like we're about to see that his mum is dead, and he's about to cry and be upset, and that will then spur him on to fighting in future episodes. No, his mum's still alive, and not only that, she's more or less healed. I mean, she was close to death's door, and then the volcano exploded, and it seems like volcanic ash has healed her up, because she's now she sounded slightly weak in voice. But we then see later on as well, she's fine physically. She's got her bandaging on, but she's fine. Oh, bloody Bronwyn! And then we find that Elendil is now regretting the fact that he picked up Galadriel in at the end of, what was it, episode 2, I think it was. So he's really upset that he brought Galadriel to Numenor because his son is now missing. Now, it's worth remembering. Elendil, the name which means elf friend. Indeed, the faithful, the group to which he belongs, who live in was it Aqualondi, they are called the Elendili, the elf friends. And this elf friend has effectively said, I wish Galadriel had died. Good elf friend. Okay. Then we have Galadriel coming before Queen Miriel, and we have one of those wonderful things put purely to make sure that they pass the Bechdel test. They have a conversation between Miriel and Galadriel, which means absolutely nothing. The Queen, who Galadriel couldn't give two hoots about most of the time that she was on Numenor, now is fully convinced because a blind queen has made a pledge to her that the Numenorians will be back. They will come back to deal with the orcs. So there is this speech from Miriel where she's seeking to build up Galadriel. There is no reference to any men at all within it. It's purely about one making a commitment to the other. And trying to raise the other up to carry on in their journey. Oh, good grief! And then we're back to the Harfoots, and the Harfoots have clearly forgotten anything that's happened previously, because Norrie's dad, the one with the broken ankle, the one who was being told he should go at the back of the line, the one who was effectively being told, we're going to abandon you. He then bursts out in this speech saying that Harfoot should stay true to one another because that's who they are. Says that they should stick together. Dude, if it wasn't for the not Gandalf character, you would be dead, abandoned by your other Harfoots. if any of the writers are watching, I doubt they are. I'm not a big enough channel. I won't get anywhere near any decent views, and therefore it's never going to make it to the writers. But just in case they are, to the writers of The Rings of Power, find another job. You clearly can't write for toffee. Your writing skills are the equivalent of a toddler trying to take on the entire All Blacks team on its own. Go away, don't write again. Note to Jeff Bezos, given that you're now slightly delayed in terms of how things are going for the rest of the series that you're wanting, sack the writers and get some people who actually know how to write. Ideally, people who know how to write and also have a bit of understanding of the lore of Tolkien. Anyway, we have this whole building up, the Harfoot saying, we're great, we stick together. And then there's a recognition of Norrie, she was right. Mary Sue, who everyone said, no, she's wrong. It's declared she was always right. And then, after this is said, Lenny Henry's character declares that his wife is always right when she's just suggested to him that he should go with Norrie and Norrie's friend and Norrie's mum to go and save Gandalf, not Gandalf. And Lenny Henry's character says his wife is always right. His wife, who said they should kill Norrie Brandyfoot, indeed, I believe, kill the whole family, take their wagons from them, so they had nothing. She is evil, and she, apparently, like the sea, is always right. Good grief. Back to the Númenóreans. We discover that the Southrons are going to be going to Pelargir, which is said to be an old Númenórean colony. They never bloody left. The portrayal we've had effectively has been Númenóreans have never been to Middle-earth up until now. And now we're saying, oh, they have an old settlement, an old colony somewhere in the south. Get your flipping story straight. We discover that Halbrand is injured and that he needs elf medicine. So he's going to go with Galadriel, though Arondir is not going with Galadriel, even though he is a warrior of Lindon. He's not returning to Lindon. He's going to stay with the Southrons. He's going to stay in the south with Bronwyn because he loves Bronwyn, so obviously he's going to stay with her. Maybe we'll even find out that Theo is his son, another half-elven who shouldn't exist. But anyway, Halbrand is going to be going with Galadriel because he needs elven healing because of the seriousness of the wound. And this will be going back to what I said earlier about the potential that we'll have, the building up of throughout. Someone said that the next episode is the last episode in the series. So if that's true, and he is who it is said he is, then he's going to become Sauron by the end of the episode. And so what will happen is that we'll have throughout the episode the budding relationship, the budding romance going on between the two of them as they journey. Lots of back and forth talking, lots of flirting, and then they get to the elven sanctuary or wherever, and my guess is that you potentially see Galadriel reunited with Celeborn. All of a sudden, Halbrand's thoughts of having a relationship with Galadriel are dashed. He's completely besotted with her. He can't take it, and so he lashes out and returns to being Sauron. That's my guess. The only other possibility is that he tries to make a move on her. She says no, and then he reacts through being rejected. So they're going off to heal Halbrand. Durin is annoyed at his father. We're back with the dwarves. There is a big argument, and amongst other things, King Durin tears off the amulet or the necklace or whatever it is from Prince Durin's neck that showed that he had a rank within Khazad-dûm. And so he's now he's talking with Disa, who who is saying, just remember, all this will be ours. You're his son, you'll inherit it when he dies. He's old, he's going to pass away, and then it'll be yours, and you get to choose what goes on. So there's elements to which this is not a bad interaction between the two, because what Disa is saying is true, but there's also a bit, particularly when she says this is going to be ours. This is pushing the idea that the Queen had any kind of say whatsoever. We see very clearly in Tolkien's lore, the queens very rarely have any real power, any real say. It's only when they are queen because they have no king, because they are the female heir rather than married to the male heir. Indeed, I think I'm right in saying we only have one female dwarf actually named in the Legendarium, and that is Thorin's sister. I think it was Dis, from where we get Fili and Kili, who were her sons. But because this is current day, this is Amazon trying to tell a story for the modern day, completely ignoring the lore of Middle Earth. Disa is going to have a big say in things. My guess is she's going to end up being the power behind the throne, if not actually being the power on the throne. Screw Durin, and he'll just be allowed to go off on his adventures with Elrond, and that'll be about it. And we then have King Durin saying to seal up where they were mining, where they found this huge vein of mithril. And one of the things that he does, he throws the healed leaf through the hole before then saying, seal it up. And we follow that leaf, and it goes down, and it goes down, and it goes down. And it finally lands on the floor, and it's then burnt, and we see the flaming Balrog. Now, granted, visually, it looks cool. However, they wake the Balrog in the Third Age when they dig too deep. The Balrog would not be awake. The Balrog, therefore, would not suddenly roar and burn this leaf up. The Balrog should be asleep. So why we're seeing a Balrog in the Second Age, when it's the Third Age, nearly 2,000 years into the Third Age, that the Balrog suddenly appears. Yeah, anyway. And then finally, we're back with the orcs. We're back with Adar. And the kind of human leader of the rebels of the south, Waldreg. He seems to be a leader now within the orcs, even though he is clearly inferior. The only thing that he has done is he was given the task of taking the sword hilt that then would become the sword to use to switch on Mount Doom. But he's now declaring, "Hail Adar, King of the Southlands," or Lord of the Southlands, or what have you. He's now declaring this, and the orcs are following him, because the orcs follow. No, they don't follow humans. Waldreg is a nobody. Waldreg is absolutely worthless to the orcs. The orcs would ignore him. Indeed, the orcs would lead if they're going to be shouting "Hail, Hail Adar," and Waldreg would have to be joining in with them. Otherwise, the orcs would probably eat him. And then we finally have a line and a visual which tells us that the Southlands is now Mordor. But it's because Adar is hailed as Lord of the Southlands. But he says the Southlands no longer exists. The Southlands is no more. And I can't remember whether they say, what is it then? But we don't hear anything being said. All we have is all of a sudden it pans away from Adar. We see the desolate waste that is Mordor. And we see the word Southlands. And then we see it disappear and be replaced by Mordor. We've basically been told about the name change of a place by a graphic. No one has declared it. No one has named it. Placing bets, anyone, that they refer to it as Mordor in the next episode, despite having no reason to refer to it as Mordor? Anyway, that's the episode. This is the longest I've gone before. I think I had a couple of rants about the law. This is an annoying episode because of the abuse of the law, particularly the whole Celeborn thing. It's utterly insane. You've got the added extra frustration of the fact that they just do not know how to be consistent in their writings, and so that as well. I've gone on again and again and again. It's so inconsistent. It's utterly bonkers. It makes absolutely no sense at all how these guys can consider themselves to be writers when they can't write anything of any consistency at all. You could go back and consult from one script to the next and see, oh, I've made a mistake here, and you can correct it. They don't seem to care. All they're thinking about is write my story, move on to the next. They're not looking to try and get anything consistent. As a result, the story makes no sense within itself. The story is utterly wasted because, even if this was not Lord of the Rings, even if this was nothing to do with Tolkien, the way they have written the story would make no sense, and this would still be at best a 2-star, 2 out of 5 star series. My initial rating, I think I gave it 1.5 stars. I think this has now dropped overall. We're talking about 0.5 star maybe. It's that bad. I will continue to watch because at the very least, the lore inconsistencies need calling out, and the more people that do it, the better. I doubt I will ever be anything particularly big as a channel, but at least I'm calling them out for this because it needs to be called out. I'm thinking as well that I'll do a video at some point on the theology elements of the Second Age, because there's a lot of theology in what Tolkien writes, even though we know very clearly he's against using analogies within his writing, but there's a very clear influence for how things go in his writing, and it's a very biblical influence that we see. So I will at some point do a video on this because certainly for me it's very interesting. It's one of the fun things I've found of being able to look back over the writings within the Silmarillion, having read it a couple of times, where I've been looking back and just saying, I see how that ties in with what Tolkien would have believed as a Christian. So I may well do something like that. But yeah, this stuff needs calling out. It needs to be pointed out for the rubbish that it is. It needs to be pointed out for how screwed up the lore is. And you never know, we might be lucky. We might have someone like the director of the Sonic film, the first Sonic the Hedgehog film, who listened and who changed. I doubt it, the way things are. You've got ideological, political nonsense ruling the roost at Amazon, ruling the roost with the Rings of Power. I don't see this changing, but you never know. We might be lucky. We might just catch a break like Sonic the Hedgehog did. But anyway, that's episode 7. Yay! I'll be back with episode 8 next week.